Hi, my name is Amy Berry, and I'm going to be presenting on Miller's information processing theory. The first developments of the theory date back to the 1950s by a man named George Miller. He borrowed testing from a computer model programming in the 1950s to show that human short-term memory, when encountered with unfamiliar information, could absorb roughly 7 things at a time. His work helped to develop the information processing theory used today. So who was George Miller? George Miller was a professor at Harvard who published a paper called The Magical Number 7 Plus or Minus 2 in 1956. It opened new thoughts about thinking in the field of research called cognitive psychology. It showed that the human mind can be observed and tested in the lab. He is called one of the most influential experimental psychologists of the 20th century. He helped move psychology research beyond behaviorist methods. A quick overview of the information processing theory. It describes how information is received, processed, stored, and then retrieved in the human brain. Here's a quick introduction to Miller's information processing theory. Within the theory, he states that learning is changing the knowledge stored by an individual's memory. The human mind can be understood using information processing model, and short-term memory is subject to certain limits, including span and quantity of information. The cognitive theory focuses on how information is encoded in our memory. It describes how the brain filters out information from what we are paying attention to in the present moment to what gets stored in our short-term memory or working memory, and ultimately into our long-term memory. Within Miller's information processing theory, he compared humans to the computer model. The way that the human mind works is similar to the way the computer processing model works. The mind receives the stimulus, or the information, processes it, stores it, locates it, and then responds to it, and can only hold 5 to 9 chunks of information at a time. There are 2 theoretical ideas within Miller's information processing model. The first one is concept of chunking and the capacity of short-term memory, and 2 is the concept of information processing, uses the metaphor as the computer as a model for human learning. So we're going to go into detail on both of these theories. The concept of chunking. Individuals can only store 5 to 9 chunks of information at a time. So these are things like digits, words, people's faces. And this was a significant contribution to the understanding of information processing. The concept of chunking was one of Miller's major contributions because it became a basic element of later theories of memory. So how information processing works in humans is the information is encoded, or gathering and representing the information within the mind. Then there's retention, or holding on to the information. And then retrieval, getting the information when necessary. So all these things have to work together in order for it to be stored in our memory. Based on Miller's research, the premise of information processing theory was developed and includes 3 stages. Creating a long-term memory is something that happens in stages. First, we perceive something through our sensory memory, anything we see, hear, feel, or taste. Short-term memory is what we use to remember things for a short period. Example would be phone numbers. And then long-term memory is information stored permanently in our brains. So sensory memory is when we receive the information or stimuli, and that message goes to our brain. The process moves a message to be stored in short-term memory. This processing occurs until all information is received and can be stored temporarily or permanently. Short-term memory is information that is temporarily stored. So it can be either discarded or transferred into long-term memory, and this process usually lasts about 15 to 20 seconds. Information retention is usually achieved through organization and repetition. Major types of organization might be component, sequence, relevant, and transitional. Long-term memory is information permanently stored. Information moves to long-term memory to help with two processes, elaboration and distribution practice. Some examples of using information processing include gaining students' attention with cues or signals at the start of a lesson, breaking up information into smaller parts, reviewing prior lessons or previous lessons, teaching from simple to more complex information, making the information more meaningful by giving real-life examples, and then to teach students how to chunk by categorizing related to the information. You can also connect new information to things previously known, motivate students to participate actively in discussions, use daily drills and fundamentals, repeat information in various formats, use verbal, written, visual, and demonstrative methods, and then lastly, limit distractions that may induce selective attention. In conclusion, information processing theory is a useful framework for structuring corporate training
and can be used in the education setting.
It offers you a formula for ensuring that your learners gain more than a passing knowledge of the material we present. It helps to ensure that it is encoded into their long-term memory and can be recalled whenever needed. And these are the references that I use for this presentation. Thank you for watching.